Welcome back everyone. Today we continue with part 53 of our What If Goku Was Betrayed and Locked Inside the Hyperbolic Time Chamber series. Let's aim for 300 likes on this one, okay? Let's get those engagements up like they used to, so don't forget to leave a comment letting me know if you've enjoyed the series so far. With that, let's begin. The air was thick with tension. The very atmosphere seemed to crackle with the impending storm of power and fury. Moro, his features twisted in anger, stared down at the gathered Saiyans with contempt. His initial urge was to obliterate the planet from existence, a swift end to an annoyance. Yet, he held back, his eyes narrowing as he focused on Yamoshi, the Saiyan who dared to rise against him. Moro's pride would not allow him to simply destroy. He had to dominate and humiliate. Moro stepped forward, his aura flaring menacingly, causing his soldiers to instinctively take a step back. With a dismissive wave of his hand, he commanded them to stand down. "I will handle this myself," he declared, his voice resonating with dark power. His gaze fixed on Yamoshi, who stood defiantly, his own energy beginning to surge in anticipation. "Once again, I shall teach you the folly of your ways," Moro sneered, recalling the ease with which he had subdued the Saiyan in their last encounter. "No matter how much power you've gained, it will never be enough. You are but a speck beneath my heel. You Saiyans have grown arrogant," Moro continued, his voice rising with each word. "A year without my presence, and you fools allow yourselves to think you've escaped the food chain. How utterly pathetic. It seems I must remind you of the natural order, where Moro, the planet eater, reigns supreme." Just as Yamoshi's muscles tensed for an imminent attack, a firm hand landed on his shoulder, halting him. It was Broly, whose presence was as calm as it was sudden. Yamoshi turned slightly to face him, noting the untouched casualness in Broly's eyes, as if the impending battle was nothing but a mild inconvenience. Broly had felt the surge of energy while in the midst of a simple meal, a turkey leg still gripped in his other hand, and decided to investigate. Moro, for all his might, didn't even register as a threat on Broly's scale of concern. His mind was occupied with a much larger problem, returning to his own time. Broly was a warrior out of time, inadvertently dragged to the past where he did not belong. His main concern wasn't the battle at hand, but rather finding a way back to his rightful place in the timeline. The kingdom's most brilliant minds, under the direct command of the king, had been tirelessly working on unraveling the complexities of temporal movement, a concept hitherto thought impossible. Broly's unexpected arrival in the past had presented them with an unprecedented challenge and opportunity. The researchers pored over ancient texts and conducted risky experiments, yet the solution remained elusive, always just out of reach. The researchers needed more time that Broly was increasingly feeling he didn't have. The urgency of his mission to return to his own era was palpable. Moro's untimely arrival and his notorious reputation for chaos only compounded Broly's anxiety. The last vivid memories before being pulled back in time were haunting. Goku and Vegeta, lifeless on the battlefield. The uncertainty of their fate gnawed at him. The potential loss of such formidable warriors and dear comrades was unthinkable. Broly knew not the why or the who of his temporal displacement, but he was determined to return, to ensure no one could further jeopardize his home, his time. For that, Moro had to be dealt with decisively. "Yamoshi, let me take this one," Broly suggested, his voice calm yet carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "It's the least I can do for the king, considering all the resources he's exhausted trying to help me return. Besides," he added, his eyes narrowing slightly with a mix of determination and newfound confidence, "I've grown considerably stronger. Let's see how effective your teachings have been." Yamoshi, understanding the stakes and recognizing the silent, fierce resolve in Broly's eyes, smiled and nodded. He powered down, his energy signature dimming as he stepped back, giving Broly the forefront in this battle. Yamoshi had always known that while Broly might still need refinement in skill and technique, his raw power was unmatched. The sheer magnitude of energy he could harness was something Yamoshi had rarely seen, even among the elite warriors of their race. "Show him what you've learned, Broly. Make him understand the power of the Saiyans," Yamoshi encouraged, his voice filled with a mix of pride and anticipation. The air around the battlefield seemed to shift, the earlier tension and fear palpably dissipating as the Saiyan warriors now stood behind Broly. They had been paralyzed by fear at the thought of facing Moro again, but Broly's presence, his calm demeanor amidst such power, reassured them. It was as if his confidence infused them with courage. Broly closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself. His primary goal had been to remain inconspicuous, to keep his energy signature as muted as possible. He was well aware that the mysterious force that had yanked him through time was still out there, lurking, possibly observing. The power needed to manipulate time was immense, and whoever wielded it was not to be underestimated. But the monotony of waiting, the simmering impatience for action, gnawed at him. Broly was a warrior at heart, and the stillness was more taxing than any battle. With a slight smirk, feeling the itch for combat too great to ignore, Broly decided to give Moro a glimpse of what he was truly up against. He would release just a sliver of his power, enough to stir the air, enough to send a clear message. His ki flared subtly, a controlled burst that rippled across the battlefield, a silent testament to his strength. The Saiyans around him felt the surge and looked on in awe, their fears overshadowed by the spectacle of power Broly controlled. Moro, sensing this new energy, turned sharply, his eyes widening slightly as he registered the change in the air. The arrogance that had painted his features began to give way to a hint of caution. He had not expected this. The sudden display of power from Broly was both a surprise and a challenge. Moro had considered himself the apex predator, the top of the universal food chain, but here stood a being whose mere restrained presence suggested depths of strength Moro hadn't anticipated. Broly's lips curled into a slight smile, his eyes gleaming with a warrior's joy. "Come then, Moro, let's see if you can teach me anything," he taunted lightly, his stance relaxed yet unmistakably ready for whatever might come his way. Moro's astonishment was palpable as he witnessed the sheer magnitude of Broly's energy. The ancient sorcerer had encountered many powerful beings in his long dark tenure as the scourge of the cosmos, but never had he sensed such raw, overwhelming power in a single individual. The energy that Broly emanated dwarfed everything else on the planet, a tidal wave of force that could easily wash away all opposition. As he watched Broly's ki surge, unchecked and wild, Moro felt a hunger awaken within him, a desperate need to possess this power, to make it his own. "This is it," Moro muttered under his breath, his eyes fixed on the Saiyan. "This power. I must have it." As Broly's power continued to escalate, the ground beneath them trembled, the city's structures groaned under the strain, and soon, the very planet itself seemed to quake in resonance with his might. Despite this tremendous display, Broly remained in his base form, a fact that surprised even him. His mastery over his ki had reached new heights, allowing him to exert incredible energy without losing control. A light of amusement twinkled in his eyes, and he couldn't help but laugh. Turning briefly to Yamoshi, "You're not a bad teacher after all," he said, his voice echoing with a mix of respect and jest. Unperturbed by the power before him, Moro discarded his robe, signaling his readiness to escalate the confrontation. He knew well that sheer force alone did not guarantee victory. His centuries of combat experience had taught him that much. Moro had faced and defeated foes whose strength surpassed his own through cunning and the strategic use of his magical abilities. "Power is not the only path to victory," he murmured, settling into a fighting stance that belied his calm acceptance of the challenge. Without a moment's hesitation, Moro unleashed his formidable magic, manipulating the very elements around them. Tapping into the life force of the planet itself, a technique he had perfected over eons, he summoned a massive surge of energy from deep within the earth. The ground split, and from it spewed a torrent of what appeared to be molten lava, enveloping Broly in a fiery prison meant to sap his strength and will. The air grew thick with heat, the temperature soaring to such extremes that it began to melt the very soil beneath their feet. Nearby Saiyans recoiled as the heat singed their skin, a painful reminder of the deadly power at Moro's command. The area around them was quickly evacuated, the Saiyans fleeing from the devastating energy unleashed by their foe. Yet, to the shock of everyone present, Moro included, Broly stepped out of the infernal cage unscathed, his expression one of amused disdain for the attempt on his resilience. With a feral grin plastered across his face, Broly moved with astonishing speed, closing the distance between him and Moro in a heartbeat. He grasped Moro by the face, his fingers clenching with enough force to send the sorcerer reeling backward, smashing into the ground with a thunderous impact. Yamoshi, observing the swift and brutal counter, couldn't help but express his admiration. "He is so fast," he commented, awe coloring his tone. The battle was unfolding in ways that even he had not anticipated, each moment showcasing Broly's extraordinary capabilities and hinting at the untapped depths of power the Saiyan warrior still held in reserve. Broly's battle with Moro ascended rapidly as the Saiyan warrior launched his foe into the sky with formidable might. With an explosive burst of speed, Broly rocketed upwards, positioning himself above Moro. His hands glowed ominously with a dense aura of condensed ki, primed for a devastating blow. As he drove his fists downward, aiming directly at Moro hurtling back to the planet, an unexpected twist occurred. Moro, with an eerie calmness, managed to halt Broly's punch mid-flight. A vile smile spread across Moro's face, revealing the sinister nature of his power. As their fists connected, Broly felt a strange sensation, a tugging at his very life essence. Moro, thriving in the clash, began to siphon the tremendous energy Broly wielded. Despite the shock of this revelation, Broly, driven by instinct and battle prowess, amplified his power output. The force of his enhanced punch broke through Moro's defenses, sending the sorcerer crashing back to the ground, his body rebounding off the terrain like a discarded toy. Landing back on the surface, Broly's confusion was palpable. He inspected himself, feeling an unfamiliar drain on his reserves. What was that? He muttered, probing the unusual sensation of having his energy sapped. This moment, unsettling in its familiarity, reminded him of past battles where similar energy siphoning tactics were used, though previously those were linked to the manipulation of godly ki, a power Broly did not possess. Moro, undeterred and seemingly unharmed, rose to his feet, brushing off the debris. The lack of any visible damage on him was alarming. Broly's mind raced as he tried to connect the dots, ultimately deciding to push his theories in a more direct confrontation. "Your efforts are futile. You can't hurt me, you're only delaying the inevitable," Moro taunted, his voice echoing menacingly across the battlefield. Without hesitation, Broly surged forward, his speed incomprehensible, a mere blur to the naked eye. He clenched his fist, energy swirling around it, ready to deliver a strike powerful enough to shatter planets. However, as his fist made contact, Moro conjured an energy sphere that enveloped him, absorbing and dissipating much of the attack's force, causing only a slight pushback against the ancient sorcerer. The intensity of the clash had unintended consequences. The planet itself began to fracture, groans of stress emanating from its very core as Moro continued to tap into its life force to fuel his defensive measures. "You can't hurt me without hurting the planet, boy. But be my guest. I can use its energy until it's extinguished." Moro laughed cruelly, his strategy clear as he exploited the planet's energy reserves. "I see," Broly responded, realization dawning on him. The slow drain of his power mirrored the leeching of the planet's vitality. Just like how you drain the planet's life energy, you can also drain people's life energy as well. Moro continued to draw more of the planet's life force, his strength visibly growing as he adapted to Broly's tactics. The sorcerer was no novice to combat. His ability to anticipate and counter Broly's moves was improving by the moment, suggesting that it would only be a matter of time before he could potentially surpass the Saiyan warrior in terms of tactical advantage. Broly stood firm, his muscular frame radiating an intense energy that even the most seasoned fighters would find daunting. "I've encountered many who thought themselves invincible because they could steal the strength of others," he proclaimed, his voice a resonant thunder across the battlefield. "But you, Moro, are merely another lesson waiting to be learned. Watch closely." With those words, Broly's aura flared dramatically, the air around him crackling with raw power. The ground beneath his feet trembled, not from the planet's distress but from the overwhelming force of his energy. Moro's eyes widened in shock, disbelief etched across his face as he realized Broly had been holding back his true capabilities. "Is he capable of transformation?" Moro muttered to himself, unprepared for what was to come. In an explosive display of light and energy, Broly began to transform. His body grew even larger, his hair lengthening and changing color as he ascended to the legendary Super Saiyan 4 form. The Saiyans watching from a distance gasped in awe, having never witnessed such a transformation. It was a form they had only read about in the ancient Namekian Book of Legends, a script held sacred and shrouded in mystery. Yamoshi, observing the transformation with a mix of admiration and concern, couldn't help but shout, "Broly, what are you doing? Are you trying to destroy the planet on purpose?" His voice was tinged with anxiety, aware of the destructive potential of such power. Broly, now fully transformed, ignored Yamoshi's worries. "I know what I'm doing," he responded calmly, his voice steady despite the swirling power that enveloped him. The quaking of the planet had ceased. Broly had achieved perfect control over his energy, a testament to his mastery of the Super Saiyan 4 form. This mastery was not innate. Broly had struggled initially with the transformation, often losing vast amounts of energy that simply dissipated into the atmosphere, unused and wasted. Under Yamoshi's guidance, however, he had learned to harness this power efficiently. Every burst of energy, every transformation was now a controlled, deliberate act. His training had taught him to conserve, to manage his formidable energy so that it replenished his strength rather than depleting it. This newfound skill gave him the ability to sustain even higher levels of power, potentially reaching the mythical state of Dark Super Saiyan 5 at will. "In just a few months, this fool has finally grasped the concept," Yamoshi remarked, a hint of pride in his voice despite his earlier concern. "It's not perfectly controlled yet, but it's undeniable progress. He's one step closer to reaching Super Saiyan 6. "You show off!" Yamoshi called out with a mixture of jest and admiration, watching as Broly turned his attention back to Moro, who was even more surprised, asked if this Saiyan was concealing his true strength. Moro's frustration boiled over as he unleashed a surge of magic, attempting to manipulate Broly's massive form and draw him closer. Yet, to his astonishment and mounting anger, Broly remained immovable, an unyielding pillar amidst a storm of arcane energy. "What?" Moro bellowed, disbelief coloring his tone as his magic proved ineffectual, a rare occurrence in his long history of conquest. Driven by desperation and rage, Moro dashed forward, closing the distance between him and Broly with alarming speed. His fists flew in a flurry of punches, each blow a testament to his might, aimed with precision and fueled by fury. The earth beneath them couldn't withstand the onslaught. It cracked and cratered, giving way as Moro's relentless assault deepened the ground beneath Broly's feet. Yet, as the dust settled and Moro's barrage came to a momentary halt, he found, much to his shock, that Broly had not sustained any damage. In fact, the Saiyan seemed almost bored with the display. In an instant that felt like an eternity to Moro, Broly caught his fist with an ease that belied his massive form. With a swift movement, Broly forced Moro down, pressing him towards the cratered earth. "You want my power," Broly stated, his voice calm and menacing. "Well, here it is, take it all. Let's see how much you can handle before you break." His words were not just a challenge, they were a provocation, a dare to push Moro to his limits. With a powerful blow to the stomach, Broly sent Moro hurtling through the air like a discarded rag doll. The sorcerer's body crashed into a nearby mountain, the impact resonating like thunder, a stark testament to Broly's overwhelming strength. "I can't believe it," a Saiyan warrior yelled from a safe distance, his voice a mix of awe and exhilaration. "He is winning. He's defeating Moro." In a fit of desperation, Moro gathered his waning strength and launched a ki blast at Broly. With a nonchalant flick of his wrist, Broly slapped the attack aside, redirecting it effortlessly towards Moro's ship. The ship exploded upon contact, a fiery ball of destruction lighting up the sky. "How is he so powerful?" Moro gasped, his breath ragged as he struggled to comprehend the situation. "I've taken so much of his power, yet it feels as if his reserves are bottomless. I know I'm getting stronger, this is the strongest I've ever been, but somehow, I can't close the gap." "What, you've reached your limit?" Broly taunted, a smirk playing across his lips. His stance was relaxed, almost casual, as if he were merely toying with Moro rather than engaged in a battle for supremacy. Moro's frustration morphed into unbridled rage as he let out a bellowing roar, his energy spiking dangerously high. With renewed ferocity, he charged at Broly, unleashing a torrent of blows that seemed to ripple through the very air. The battlefield became a blur of motion as Moro's fists met Broly's seemingly impenetrable defense. Despite the intensity of the assault, Broly walked through the onslaught, unaffected and visibly unharmed. His superior ki control allowed him to manage his power loss efficiently, losing energy at a far slower rate than Moro might have anticipated. On the other side, Moro's power surged exponentially. With each passing moment, he felt an intoxicating rush of strength coursing through him, elevating his power to levels he perceived as divine. He even entertained the thought of standing toe-to-toe with Beerus, the god of destruction, should their paths ever cross. This newfound might gave him the confidence to finally land a significant blow to Broly's stomach, sending the Saiyan hurtling backward. However, Broly quickly regained his composure and halted his backward momentum, floating effortlessly mid-air before landing gracefully back on the surface. Moro, observing his own hands, felt a surge of triumph as he witnessed the fruits of his relentless assault. The gap between them was closing, or so it seemed. He was tapping into the raw essence of what made Broly's legendary Super Saiyan 4 form so formidable. "Don't disappoint me," Broly called out, his voice calm yet edged with challenge. "You got the power you wanted. I was looking for a training dummy, someone I could test the fruits of my training on." As Broly prepared to charge once more, eager to resume their cataclysmic duel, the unforeseen consequences of Moro's unchecked absorption began to manifest. Moro had indeed become more powerful, but his body was not equipped to handle the overwhelming and raw energy of Broly's Super Saiyan 4 form. His form began to swell unnaturally, his silhouette distorting as his body struggled to contain the immense power. "So, you've reached your limit," Broly remarked, almost pityingly. "Such a shame." With precision and control, Broly launched into another series of attacks, each strike more forceful than the last. With every hit, Moro's body swelled further, a grotesque testament to his inability to handle the Saiyan's power. "You want my power, don't you? So here, take more," Broly yelled, his voice echoing across the battlefield as he delivered blow after blow, pumping even more energy into Moro's already overwhelmed system. Broly then leaped back, observing the effects of his strategy with a cold, calculated gaze. His smile broadened, not out of malice, but satisfaction. His plan had worked perfectly. He had deliberately let Moro believe he was gaining the upper hand, only to overwhelm him with an insurmountable surge of energy. Broly had understood that there was a limit to how much energy Moro could absorb, and he had exploited that flaw masterfully. Moro, overwhelmed and overpowered, struggled to comprehend the dire predicament he found himself in. For the first time in his long and malevolent life, he faced the boundaries of his own abilities. "What's happening?" he gasped, his voice a mix of confusion and fear. "What have you done to me?" Broly's laughter, deep and resonant, filled the air as he towered over the swollen figure of Moro. "I've spent a lifetime training my body to harness the power of Super Saiyan 4. Broly explained, his tone almost instructive. "But your body, having only just been exposed to such immense power, couldn't possibly regulate it. It would take you centuries to even come close to mastering the energy you've so recklessly absorbed." He looked down at Moro, his expression turning serious. "Your power isn't your own. You steal from others without truly understanding it. That means, while you may gain temporary boosts, you'll never unlock the full potential nor improve upon it. You're just a thief in the realm of power, Moro." As Broly spoke, Moro's body became grotesquely enlarged, swelling like a balloon on the verge of bursting. The energy within him, unstable and uncontrollable, turned him into a literal bomb, ticking down to inevitable detonation. Recognizing the imminent danger, Broly acted swiftly. He grabbed Moro by the harness, launched upwards with incredible speed, and spun around to hurl him far off the planet's surface and deep into space. There, removed from the harm he could cause to the planet and its inhabitants, Moro's body reached its limit and exploded spectacularly, ending his threat once and for all. As Broly powered back down to his base form, the onlookers from a safe distance were left in utter disbelief. The battlefield fell silent, the only sounds the distant echoes of the explosion that marked Moro's demise. King Salad, witnessing the unthinkable, voiced his astonishment. "How can a Saiyan be this powerful? Is he a god? Do we Saiyans truly possess the potential to achieve such incomprehensible strength?" Meanwhile, Yamoshi, who had trained Broly and knew of his capabilities, found himself re-evaluating the very limits of Saiyan potential. "Hey, Broly," he called out, his voice carrying a mix of excitement and curiosity. "Remind me, you said there are other Saiyans from your time who are just as strong as you?" He needed to understand if Broly was an anomaly or if such power was indeed something others of their race could aspire to. "Yes, of course," Broly replied, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. "They might even be stronger than me." His gaze then shifted to King Salad, a hint of urgency returning to his tone. "Speaking of that, King Salad, have you discovered a way to bring me back yet?" King Salad, still visibly shaken by the sheer display of power he had witnessed, struggled to regain his composure. Broly's voice snapped him back to the present. "King," Broly called out, drawing the king out of his stunned silence. "I'm unsure. We have to talk to my researchers first." The king responded slowly, his voice tinged with awe and uncertainty. He then suggested they reconvene in the throne room once everyone had sufficiently recovered from the day's tumultuous events. Broly, his stomach still dictating his priorities, flew back to the kitchen to satisfy his lingering hunger. His departure left a palpable sense of inspiration among the gathered Saiyans. They had witnessed a level of strength they had never imagined possible, and it filled them with newfound confidence and determination. Broly's display had unwittingly set a new benchmark for what a Saiyan could achieve, sparking a fierce desire in many to reach and perhaps even surpass his prowess. From that day forward, Broly's influence permeated the Saiyan race, cementing their reputation across the ages as a formidable warrior race. Days passed as the Saiyans began the process of rebuilding, mending the damages wrought by Moro's invasion. As planned, Broly met with King Salad in the throne room, where Yamoshi, a researcher, an elder who had safeguarded the Namekian Book of Legends, and the king himself were waiting. The discussion, however, did not yield the answers Broly had hoped for. The researcher explained their current understanding, stating bluntly, "There is no known method of time travel to the future, at least not yet. The only lead we have comes from what might be considered a fairy tale." The elder then spoke of the Namekian Book of Legends, which mentioned the use of Dragon Balls, mystical orbs that, when gathered, could summon a dragon capable of granting any wish. The king scoffed at the notion, disbelief clear in his voice. "A dragon that can grant any wish? Come on, that sounds like a lie." Broly, listening intently, suddenly slapped his forehead in realization. "How stupid can I be?" he muttered to himself. He recalled another use of the Dragon Balls from his own time when they had asked Shenron to aid in fusing Piccolo. After their use, the Dragon Balls turned to stone and would not be active again for another 1,000 years. It hadn't occurred to him that, in this past timeline, the Dragon Balls might still be usable. "Yes, I can confirm that what the elders are saying is true," Broly affirmed, his voice growing steadier with his newfound realization. "The Dragon Balls do exist. We have them in other times." A new thought dawned on him. A potential solution to a problem that had weighed heavily on his heart. Yes, maybe I can wish Gohan back to life. That's it for this episode, guys. If you've watched to the end, then that may be an indication that you enjoy the episode, so please drop a like so the video could reach more people. See you in the next episode.